I've known Steve for years and years, and where is Steve? Come up here. Okay. He's coming. What did you say?
I said keep it short.
Keep it short.
Don't make this long.
He comes to my museum and bosses me around. You know why? Because he's retired U.S. Air Force and he thinks he's a real smarty. Come on over here, Steve. He's a great hero. So Steve has over 40 years of aviation experience. He has operated and instructed in over 17 types of aircraft, from single-seat military fighter aircraft to wide-body commercial aircraft. He got out of the military and became a commercial pilot. He is a veteran of the 1991 Gulf War, where he flew the F-117A stealth fighter on combat missions in Iraq and Kuwait. And the last time he was here, that's what he talked about. He's amassed over 11,000 flight hours in his aviation career. Today, though, he'll be speaking specifically about the drone development in the modern world, which we all are hearing about. He is the founder of 2 Idaho companies specializing in unmanned aircraft systems, as they're called, and has been involved in numerous governmental and commercial contracts involving infrastructure inspections, firefighting support, university research, forestry assessment, and much more. So he's going to give away all the secrets today, right?
Thank you.
Okay, here's Steve. Welcome him, please.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you very much. Typically, I talk very, very loud, and I don't need this, but they tell me they need this thing for recording. Briefly, first of all, thank you all for your service. As a fellow veteran, I'm in awe when I see the accomplishments of the folks in this audience and what you represent. And I've always been a firm believer that the Air Force is a pretty luxurious way to go into combat. And I had the unfortunate experience of walking up the highway of death after Desert Storm, the day after the ceasefire, and I got to see the carnage of what happens on the ground. And that's when my heart went out, and I realized that the true heroes of the world are the grunts carrying the rifles that live inside the ground and the shaking earth and the bombardment and the stress that happens every day. Those guys are the true heroes. What we did was just support them. And my heart goes out to everyone that served in the infantry or on the ground in any way, shape, or form, because that's scary stuff. And thank you. Thank you all. I mean that from my heart. Get rid of this before I get too long. Thanks. All right, so we're going to talk about drones here in actually a very specific way here in Idaho. We started a company in 2012, and I'll tell you how I wound up doing that. I wanted to find drones on active duty. I got recalled active duty after being retired 15 years. I retired in '96 after 21 years and 9 months. I got recalled in 2010 on a voluntary recall at the age of 53. I went back on active duty and served 3 more years, only now flying drones, as you guys all know them. We call them unmanned aircraft systems. We formed a company in 2012, and I'll talk a little bit about that company here and what we do. This was the original company, was Advanced Aviation Solutions, the orange logo there. That was my company. We were recently purchased. We just completed the deal in March to Empire Airlines, and we formed Empire Unmanned. So now our company is actually run by an airline based in Hayden, Idaho. If you don't know much about Empire Airlines, go online and look at them. They're a pretty neat company. They've been in Idaho 30 years, privately owned, very successful, and they saw the vision in the future of unmanned technology, and they wanted to be a part of that. So they acquired our company, so now I'm part of that company as well, and the other one's going away. That's the old days. Okay, so upper left was a stealth, lower right is the Global Hawk. So that was the first unmanned aircraft I flew. That airplane's pretty interesting, you guys. Go online and Google that too. It's made by Northrop Grumman. It's got a 135-foot wingspan. It's about the size of a 737 on the wingspan. The fuselage is a little bit smaller. It weighs about 18,000 pounds, of which over half of that is gas. It stays airborne for 32 hours, and we flew it from the ground in California over Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Libya, other African countries, of course, South Korea on the border, the South China Sea, where else? In the Mediterranean, numbers of places. It actually is probably going to be a replacement for the U-2 airplane because it can actually reach locations around the globe that we can't with manned airplanes right now. So it's a great intelligence asset, and that's all it is an intelligence asset. It has no weapons. But with 32 hours of airborne time, we rotated pilots every 4 hours. through that thing. So it's kind of weird for guys that have flown airplanes and actually been in them all their lives, like me, to get up and walk away from an airplane and then go home and go to bed, and the next day you come back, you find a different airplane, that one landed. There's no ownership. It's like you weren't there for takeoff and landing, you were just there for part of it, and there's like no ownership in this mission anymore. So they're experiencing all kinds of problems. So let's talk about drone versus UAS, just so you guys know. We succumb to the term drone because, in fact, that's what the press has dubbed it. But if you want to know the true definition, a drone is something that you take off, you go home, you go to bed, you wake up, and it's back by itself. An unmanned aircraft system actually has a pilot at the controls the entire time it's airborne. Every one of them has a pilot sitting at the controls of that airplane the entire time. So we have all these communication links. We work with the satellite system, and we work with line of sight. So beyond line of sight is with the satellites, and then line of sight is just visually line of sight with the vehicle. You like a UHF or VHF radio command and control. What I do here is I talk about the different academic disciplines that are required to run this system. So I've spoken with all of the presidents of all the universities in the state and a number of academic folks to let them know that there are opportunities out there to train kids today that will work on these systems in so many different areas. But that gives you kind of an idea of the different disciplines. Let's talk about what's a legal operation. Okay, so this vehicle right here, interestingly enough, is called the EBAG. Okay, it's about $18,000. And it's just a piece of foam, okay? That's all it is with a GPS system in it. But we cover 500 acres an hour with this vehicle. We map through mining, through agriculture, cattle operations, bridge inspections. There's just a ton of things that we're actually actively doing right now today with this vehicle. Notice on the bottom it's got a November number. We actually have to register with the FAA. We pay taxes on it, just like an airplane. Believe it or not, the state of Idaho taxes airplanes based on the weight of the vehicle. But because they didn't want 20 cents, they decided to make a minimum of 20 bucks. So we paid 20 bucks. But the neat thing is, I talked with Mike Pape about this. I said, really, Mike, are we going to do this? He says, yeah, probably not. So they rescinded it and refunded my money. But anyway, so we have about 6 of these right now, and they're actively being employed in Colorado, California, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and soon to be Wyoming is where we're flying with pilots right now. Anyway, that vehicle carries about 5 different sensors. An approved company such as ours, we were the 7th in the United States to get it, right behind like Google and Amazon. We were a young startup. Is somebody that the FAA allows to fly, and they bless you and they give you documentation that you're legal to fly. But we have to have, our pilots are literally licensed pilots. They have to be a licensed pilot, they have to have a medical, and we have to have a visual observer. So it takes 2 people to fly this airplane. 2 people. How many guys flew the F-16 in here? I know there's a bunch. How many guys flew single-seat fighters? It takes 2 to fly this, okay? Interestingly enough, and we pay them, of course, and they're making good money, but the bottom line is we have liability insurance, we have to have pilot training records. Interesting story on this one, we lost one to a hawk attack. Now, the funny thing was I had an Army helicopter flying it, and I said, you know, had it been a fighter pilot, it would have never happened. But the Army dude just didn't know how to maneuver in time. Anyway, so a hawk comes in, and it not only hits the airplane once in flight, it hits it twice, it reattacks. So it came in, talon marks all over this thing, cuts, scratches, bruises, the airplane wobbles, the camera falls out. The camera was $20,000, okay? It falls out into a field of corn, or actually it was sugar beets that were wet, probably 15 inches high, muddy field. We never found the camera. And then the battery's hanging out the nose and flopping. We get it on the ground and we make a claim to the insurance company. They want my pilot training records for the pilot. They want to know when his last flight was, how many hours he had in the airplane, who was his instructor. We sent all this stuff up there just like if it was a manned accident being investigated by the NTSB. And they finally laughed and said, okay, good, we'll pay it. So we had a $1,000 deductible, and they sent us a check, I think, for 30 grand after that. So we have insurance involved. We got lawyers involved. So even though this is a little foam airplane, let me tell you, the red tape we go through to fly legally anywhere in the United States is pretty phenomenal. But the neat thing about that is because we are legal, we are a sole provider to a very large ag company here in town. We are contracted with Idaho Transportation Department, all of the universities, University of Montana, etc. We can go down the list of who our customers are because we are legal. So this is kind of quick exemption requirements. I'm not going to bore you with the details because I've already mentioned the high points, but notice that pilot will hold either an airline transport pilot or commercial private recreational sport pilot certificate. That's a minimum requirement for an FAA-approved drone operator today. So if you're out there flying for money, that's what you have to have. If you're a hobbyist and you don't generate any funds or anything like that, then there's no regulation at all. But for us, we have a lot of regulations. I won't go through all of them. But also, I do want to bring up something here. We do have what's called a COA. What's our airspace? It's a certificate of authorization. We are allowed as a company to fly anywhere in the United States at 400 feet and below, nothing above 400 feet. In those areas, though, we have restrictions around airports. We have to issue NOTAMs. We actually have letters of agreement with airports that we operate within the vicinity of. So there's a whole bunch of red tape, again, that goes along with that. And like I said, I'm not going to bore you with all that. So right now we have 7 exemptions. We flew our first flight for revenue 15 April last year. And those are the industries that we serve today. We also have now 7 different exemptions for 10 different vehicles and 15 different sensors. So we have fixed wing, rotary wing vehicles out there right now that we apply to different items. For instance, doing bridge inspections underneath the I-84 bridge over the Snake River, we have a rotary aircraft with a sensor mounted on the top of it so that we can look up under the bridge and map the faults on the bridge or whatever inspection criteria the Department of Transportation levies upon us. So different vehicles for different purposes, which brings up another point. A lot of people go out and buy these things and then find out what they bought doesn't fit their needs. You know, for hobbyists, it's great to have them, but I've seen a lot of people, and especially at universities and other organizations, that buy them, and then it turns out the vehicle they purchased cannot do what they need done. So we fill those gaps. This was what we did in 2015, agriculture, mining, serving, engineering, and government operations. So you can see agriculture was our biggest customer, but that's shifting into mining. This is where we operated in 2015. Each one of these circles represents about 300 statute miles, and that's just long enough for a guy to drive in a day. So we have a crew inside that circle. They fly around to the customers, and they go in and out, bring the data back, upload the data, and then we have guys on the ground that process the information. This is kind of what you get when you have vegetative analysis. This is an onion field in Prosser, Washington. This is what it looks like with a camera. That's what it looks like after we've done our magic with the GIS data that we've collected off of this little guy right here. We have a thumb drive in here. We download the information, and then we turn it over to our GIS guys. That's Geographical Information Services. And those guys turn it into a mosaic that now the farmer knows where it's green is good, where it's yellow is bad. So you can see he can adjust. Now he still needs to go out into the field and figure out what's causing that yellow. We have sensors that can do that, but the sensors are like $5 million. So you can't really get cost out of that right now, okay? As the price of those drops, it might be more effective. But right now, the farmer will go out and ground truth it. He'll walk out there and say, oh, this is a bug problem, it's a weed problem, or it's a water problem. And if it's a water problem, then he can adjust the pivot, because each one of the pivot heads now is computerized. So we can adjust the flow of water as it tracks around. These data points are down to 3 centimeters of resolution. So it can actually go out to within 3 centimeters on a GPS and go, okay, here's where my problem is. It's this bug or whatever it is that's affecting his crop. This is a water runoff. This guy's farm is in the upper part of the thing. His neighbor's is in the lower part. This is where this guy's farm is dumping all of his water into his neighbor. The blue is a water runoff. So what we detected here, he didn't even know it, as all of his water was being pushed down into his neighbor's property. So he adjusts the flow on that. This line through the middle up top, not this one, this is a definition line, but there's another faint line you can see up there. What happened with that was that he had his plow blade set too deep there, and it actually dug a trench down the middle of the field that he was unaware of until we showed him, and that adjusted water problems too. Okay, so we do mining. We go out and we map mines, and you can see the yellow contours on here. From our information, we can actually tell the mining company where they moved material and how much material they moved. So we fly over this mine, and oh, by the way, our pilots are now mine safety certified, because if any of you have ever been involved in mining, you have to have certification to step foot on a mine. So they went out and had to get this OSHA mine training for our pilots so they could go fly on the mine. But we do this, and we provide the volume calculations to the mining company so they can adjust inventory and they know where we're at. We're working on a sensor now that can actually tell us where denser pockets of particular ore or phosphates are. So once we get those sensors up, we'll be able to say, hey, dig here on the face of the mine, on the surface, not subsurface. The volume calculations, we can tell them how much is in each pile. in cubic meters or whatever measurement you want, that's surveying. So this is a sawmill up in northern Idaho. They wanted to know how many chips they had laying out there. So we went out and we figured out exactly how much volume of sawmill chips were in their yard. An obvious benefit to that is now they know what they have for product and what they can do and how much they can market. Do the same thing for gravel pits. We even, the new one is we're mapping out dairy farm poop piles. So, they got to report how much poop comes out of those farms. I'm learning so much about so many industries. It's amazing. So we're actually mapping out poop piles right now that are turned into fertilizer and other products off of the dairy farm. This is an interesting one, and I'll come back to. Okay, so this is our first. This is what it looks like with the naked eye. This is what it looks like with our infrared camera. And then this is after we broke down the infrared into gradients, and these are noxious weeds. And they were running off of the water up there and going onto the banks. This farmer swore he had no noxious weeds on his property at all. He eradicated them all. And we pointed out, well, yeah, not quite. There's still some on your farm. So we do noxious weed analysis, and we do that for government agencies as well. And obviously benefits there. These are farms that we do for Simplot, which are actual academic research farms. Each one of them represents a plot. That's 1,385 individual plots. Each one of those has an individual data set that goes with it, so they know what's growing, what's working, what's not working, what seeds producing, what fertilizers are producing. So we do that with these little guys. We went up and we did forest fire analysis post-burn for the state of Idaho Lands Department up in northern Idaho last year. And then this one is a pre and post burn. That hillside is extremely steep and unstable. We didn't put the digital elevation on it, but from this road down to the water is like straight down. They couldn't get on it, so we just flew over it and gave them the data they needed so they would be able to analyze the total effect of the burn. This is a cool one. When a farmer says the elk are eating my feed or eating my crops, we can prove it. And not only can we prove it, we can tell you exactly how much the elk ate. So we can go out and calculate. So all those are trails of game animals that have gone through that field. And then the little pockets there, they're either bedded down or they've eaten it. And this was an elk farm damage. Elk damage. This is where we're operating this year. So you can see last year we were just up in the Idaho-Washington region, but we've expanded out over to Wyoming and to California too. So we have 2 to 3 crews in each one of those circles with 2 of those vehicles. And those are the guys provided to our customers. These are other things you can do with them. And as we spoke of, there's just 1,000 things. So how does this work? We launch this thing, it goes up on a pre-planned flight plan, it flies over the field, GPS autonomously, we just watch it because we gotta have a visual observer and a pilot there. Does the data collection and lands, and then we take the data, we upload it into the cloud, the proverbial cloud, and then our scientists get in there and they turn that data into actual pictures such as this. So a farmer or a customer can now get into the data set and look and see specifically to his subscription what his data is. We also have it now archivable, so if a farmer rotates crops every 5 years or 3 years or 2 years, he can go back and look at crop history now because it's in the database. So now he has a whole database to go back through, which is kind of cool. All right, everybody likes to talk about privacy. So which one of these are drones? Trick question, they're all drones. Okay, every one of those is an unmanned vehicle. And so we're all concerned about privacy, and Chuck Winder and I put together some legislation we helped write, and Idaho has an anti-drone law. Okay, that law is in effect, signed by Governor Otter in April of 13, so 2 years now, against the illegal use of drones to protect our privacy as citizens. I'm a firm believer in that because I know how it can be abused by specific agencies or individuals. And the real concern that we face with privacy is not so much drones. I like to think of it's not the collection method, because I can steal your data out of your computer, I can steal the data out of your ATM, I can steal the data from the hotel database, social security database, military database. It's unauthorized use of data. I don't care how it's collected. It's a matter of prosecuting the criminals that actually obtain data and use it illegally. It's not whether it's collected with a UAS or an airborne vehicle, because face it, every sensor we can put on an unmanned vehicle, we can put on a manned vehicle. And you will never ever know the difference if they were flying over your house. You wouldn't think twice if a helicopter flew over your house, but he could be collecting data. Okay, every one of those sensors is available for all those platforms. So I like to talk to everybody and inform them, really, we need to focus our legislative actions in our legal departments on illegal use of data, not how it's collected. Because it's like whack-a-mole. It's like fighting terrorism. If we do every collection method, all we're going to be doing is writing legislation for every single method of collecting data illegally versus prosecuting the people that are doing it and using it illegally. So that's kind of a debate point. All righty. I think that's it. I'm going to leave it open for questions now. So if anybody has any specific questions, that'd be great. If not, I know you've been sitting here a long time and maybe have to go to the bathroom or whatever. Go ahead, right here.
Do you use this
I'm going to hand this to you.
Steve, I've got a second mic.
Oh, okay.
Do you use this on Border Patrol here?
Hold on just a second. I'm going to turn this on. We do not.
Why not?
Okay, so presently, our company is not involved in law enforcement. We'll do first responder stuff, but the law enforcement issue goes back to that privacy thing, and we're a little bit hesitant about getting involved in those issues right now because of the legal reasons. I know, but it is the fact of life. We do have, I will let you know, Customs and Border Patrol is flying our border right now with a home base in North Dakota. And I don't know how far west it goes, but it's up by Grand Forks, and they're flying, I think it's Predators on the CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, and they're flying Northern Border Protection right now. And they are doing it on the southern border as well. Our company is not involved in that. This vehicle would not be practical for it. You really need a vehicle that can go, 20 hours and fly for 1,000 miles, and that's beyond line of sight. And only people that can do that right now are government agencies. There you go. Next question?
Here, I've got a mic here.
The Global Hawk, you said 32 hours. I was just wondering, are they reliable enough to last longer than 32 hours in the air? And the main reason for that question is, has air-to-air refueling ever been tried?
So, great question. I started my career in 1974 as a boom operator on KC-135s. Okay, so for folks that know about that, I was an enlisted guy the local judge was really pissed off at and said, son, you're joining the military. So, anyway, when I got into the stealth, the master sergeant that was interviewing for me for my clearance, he goes, Major, you couldn't even get into the Air Force today. And I said, Sergeant, that's how you got in the Air Force in 1974. At any rate, so yeah, I know quite a bit about air refueling, and believe it or not, they have experimented with it at Edwards Air Force Base, in-flight refueling between two unmanned vehicles, an unmanned tanker and an unmanned receiver, and that has been done. Okay, and Navy, for those that follow it, they've done the unmanned combat aerial vehicle off of a carrier. They now have an unmanned fighter, so to speak, and it's been tested and flown off a carrier and trapped back on a carrier. So the technology is there, it is advancing. Anything else?
Thank you, retired Air Force. Norm Hollenbeck. You mentioned at least once, that you flew around 400 feet, but the aerial view of the onion patch circle and a few others look like you were up a lot higher than 400 feet.
No, that's the data after it's been processed. What you're looking at is the orthomosaic data that's produced into a file from a vehicle that was flown at 400 feet. So what you're looking at is the data set afterwards. That's not from the vehicle. All we do is collect the data, and we process the data into usable products. So first of all, I still fly actively for an airline, and my whole livelihood is based on my FAA licensing, and also our company its operation is based upon compliance. We do nothing illegal. So 400 foot is absolute max. In fact, we'll fire a guy if we find him flying over it. Okay, so you can rest assured that we're not above that altitude right now. And like I said, we issue NOTAMs when we fly. We have to, sir, in the back.
How close is the pilot and observer for this?
Okay, so they have to be maintained in visual line of sight. So with line of sight, it's about a half a mile. So you can move your visual observer out to the center of a field and have the pilot on the edge of the field, and at all times while it's over a crop circle, you can maintain visual contact. And if you notice, it's painted black, and that was one of the reasons that we learned why that great northern harrier attacked it, because it looks like a bird of prey to another bird of prey. We had no idea. I went to a biologist, and he said, paint really big eyes on it. You guys remember those baby moon hubcaps and the decal? Yeah. He said, put some of those on it, because a predator judges its prey by the size of its eyes. So he said, paint really big eyes on it or paint it a different color, because right now it looks like another predator infringing upon his ground or her ground. Anything else?
Here, right here.
Bruce Chandler. I'm the safety guy for our Napa model aviators.
Oh, hi, Bruce. Nice to meet
And
you.
since February 19th, I believe it was, all of our airplanes, all of our drones, everything has to have an FAA number on it. Now, I guess that's just the federal government doing that, and I actually checked with them, and the person I was talking to at the FAA knew nothing about the AMA, which is the Academy of Model
Yeah, we're a
Aeronautics.
member of it because we support you guys and your rules and your ethics and operations.
The fact that all of our model guys have subscribed to this FAA rule now, aren't the only bad guys out there the ones that aren't subscribing to it, that are going to fly things illegally?
Yeah, it's kind of like gun control, right? I mean, the reality is what it comes down to is the FAA is not capable of enforcing the rules that they have on the books. God bless them, I understand why, and as a manned aviator to this day, I still believe that these things have to be integrated correctly, safely, into the national airspace structure. That's why I'm such an advocate for safety for these things and to make sure that we don't break the rules. At the end of the day, though, someone asked me earlier today, as an example, if a farmer flies over his farm and he produces data that allows him to make an economic decision, and he doesn't have an exemption and he doesn't have a private pilot's license, he doesn't do any of that. He just goes out and he makes economic decisions by flying his own drone over his own property, nobody else around, Kendrick, Idaho, in the middle of nowhere. Technically, by law, he's illegal because he made an economic decision. Now, if that same farmer flew over his personal garden and decided what to do to make his personal edible garden better, he's legal. And that's the way the FAA defines it. But figure this out. How does the FAA enforce that? Okay, and that's really what it comes down to. Somebody said, well, what if I go do that? I said, I will never condone any of that publicly. But the reality is that the only people that get prosecuted by the FAA right now are the guys that make it on the cover of the Statesman, or the guys that make it on the cover of some magazine because they ran it into a superstructure downtown New York, or they crashed it on the White House lawn. Those are the guys that are going to get prosecuted. They'd be stupid anyway. They're going to be prosecuted for something else if it went for that. But the FAA can't. They just don't have enough bodies. They've even tried to recruit local law enforcement to go out and to police unmanned aircraft. They call it rogue unmanned aircraft operations, and they just simply can't. There's just not. There's 400,000 registered drones now in America. 400,000, and that was just like a week ago. It's probably 500,000 now.
So there aren't any satellites up there checking everybody's drone?
Well, it's kind of funny because, a lot of the farmers use some very sophisticated satellite products, and I'm going to segue into that. The products are great, they're fabulous, but a satellite also costs a lot of money, and it's subject to restrictions to visibility. So if there's smoke or cloud cover or fog or rain, precipitation, they can't get the information because the satellites simply can't burn through that, not the commercial ones. So therefore, they use us, and we, the way I like to describe it is we're just another tool in the shed. You walk into his barn, he's got all those implements in there. This thing is just another implement. It's not a panacea, it's not going to fix everything, but it allows him to make better informed economic decisions based on the data that we can gather than the way he does it now, which is walking around the field. Anything else? Nora?
Yeah. I was kind of wondering that aircraft or drone, it looks like it would be very much affected by the weather, like wind or rain. So is there always somebody visually have their eye on that thing?
Yeah.
And then do they have to land it? And
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so this thing performs at like 60 miles an hour. Okay, is what it flies at. It stays airborne for about 40 minutes on one battery charge. Covers 500 acres in an hour at 400 feet elevation when it comes to data collection. It can handle 37 knots of wind, okay, is what this crosswind limitation is on this thing, and it'll still track our GPS flight plan. It does not work in the rain. So if we get weathered out, we get weathered out. Okay, we won't fly it. But we run into the same problems with the data collection. You're not going to get great data if it's obscured by rain or mist or fog down below it. And yes, somebody is at the controls the entire time, and he can issue a come home command, and it'll come right back and land at his feet, or to the point that you launched it, which is usually right next to you. And it just takes, you do this to launch it, it kind of orients the gyros in it, and then you just push it out and it takes off, and then it comes back and it just belly lands. The first one that we have, I don't know how many hours, but it looks miserable because it's been chopped up so bad and so many flights and so many uses out of it that we actually want to issue it to the Hall of Fame for the state of Idaho because it's got the first November number. It was the first registered drone in the state, and it's the first one that the state required us to register. So there's a little Idaho aviation sticker on the bottom of that one. And like I said, since then Mike's decided not to make us do that anymore, but that one had it. So we think that one belongs in the Aviation Hall of Fame for Idaho. Anything else?
What about the Warhawk?
Well, we can put it in the Warhawk too. We got one way back there.
Thank you, a loyal fan.
It's just not a military drone.
Get with it, Steve.
I'm sorry.
I'm not just showing off here, I'm trying to get back here.
Anybody up close? Yeah. Oh, real quick, one more.
Has there been any prosecution?
Yeah, okay, the question is, has there been any prosecutions? I know that there's been...
No, does it have transponder?
Oh, does it have a transponder? No, because it doesn't operate in controlled airspace right now. Okay, but like the Global Hawk has a transponder, it had TCAS, okay, it had everything, because we operated in a TFR, we take off up to 18,000 feet, then we pick up our clearance with Oakland Center, and the call sign's Hawk 15 or Hawk 11, it's Hawk 11 joining you, passing 18,000, requesting the block 55 to 65,000, squawking 2354, and I go roger radar contact, climb and maintain the block, and we would just climb right through the airspace with the airliners and everybody, just as if we were separated as another airplane. But that was a Global Hawk, and of course that's not this thing. And this thing operates below the requirements for any of that anyway.
Boy, you can sure tell he's an airline pilot. And an Air Force pilot. Squawk.
Yeah, I think that's it. All right, guys, well, listen, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate
Well,
it.
Steve will stick around for a few minutes if you have questions. And just to let all of you know, by the way, May 7th is International Drone Day. We will be having an event here all day where there'll be demonstration drone flying below 400 feet. And Steve will be here, and we have Gowan Field is bringing a military drone here. We'll have different exhibits and 10 simulators to give it a try yourself. So be sure to keep that on your date, International Drone Day, May 7th, right here at the museum for the whole day.
Hey, Sue, can I say one thing? Thank you to Sue Paul, and of course I got to put a shout out to Allie and Barry Hill, my fellow United Airline employees that I miss very, very much.
I want to give Steve our coin because special people get those. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks.
It's an honor to have you here again.
Where's the whiskey?
Oh, it's hidden in my office. Come on in the right-hand drawer.